Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at Sagrada, specifically the official solo mode, not any of the fan variants that are out there. No disclaimer for this one, my friend Nick sent me a copy to try, so thanks Nick. Sagrada is a fun, quick dice placement game, but with a somewhat maligned solo mode. Is that reputation deserved? Let's find out and get to the list. So I'm going to start with a pro for my number 5, a pretty basic one, and that's the fact that this game is quick and accessible, especially for the solo play. The rules are incredibly straightforward. Playing through a game, no joke, will take you maybe like 5 to 10 minutes. It really is that fast. And while I think this might be more of a pro for the competitive play of the game, because it's so easy to get to the table with people, it's also nice for the solo in that you can play it as a quick filler or string together several games in a row. But for my number 4, I'm getting more into the actual mechanics of the solo play, and here we're looking at the tools, and this is a bit of a mix for me. So these tool cards, you get a random assortment each game, are basically your luck mitigation, letting you mess with your die numbers or die colors or where they're placed. And usually in Sagrada, you have this resource you use to make use of the tools, and if you use them earlier, it costs less, which is a nice little mechanic. But in solo, they ditch all of that, and instead each tool requires a specific die to be discarded for it. Now, on the positive side, I like the tools themselves. They give some mitigation in a dice game. You certainly need that. And they do add to the puzzle of solo play, because the higher the dice you give to the AI, we'll get to that later, the worse. So you want to kind of structure your use of the tools so that you use the highest value dice of the right color, but that's also where it gets into a negative for solo play, because it's so restrictive in how you use the tools and when you use them, and the ideal use of a tool is so dedicated to having a high value of the right color that you sometimes feel forced to use them, and the mitigation kind of takes a back seat to just trying to get a high score with them. I have another mix at number 3, focusing on the objective cards in the game. So you have a few of these objective cards that tell you specific things they want you to do with your dice building and where you place them on your board, and they give you different victory points based on that. And additionally, in solo, you have 2 personal objectives that'll make certain colors more valuable for you. Now, the big positive here is how the different objectives will give variety to the play, because you'll be trying to do different things. It increases the general complexity and difficulty of the puzzle you're trying to solve in a way in placing your dice, so all of that is good. But the main negative is that the objectives fall flat in solo, because they're not balanced at all for the AI, which always prefers to have high value dice. So some objectives will be better for you in solo, and some will just be strictly worse. And I personally find that frustrating in a solo score-based game when you can look at the lay of the cards right at the beginning and basically know you've got a bum deal and your score won't be that high. My number 2 is also a mix. I've got a lot of them, and that's the core dice placement of the game, and specifically the core dice placement in solo, because in competitive, I think this dice placement would be a pro, dealing with the objectives and seeing which colors other players seem to be going for, and using the tools to mitigate. It all works really well, and the idea that you can't have certain values and colors next to each other orthogonally, it's a nice little puzzle. But once again, the solo mode rears its ugly head, because it has this play style where you have 4 dice and you pick 2 of them to use, but the AI is going to score on the dice you give them, so you pretty much always want to go for the highest value dice. Like, there's very little choice to it, because pretty much the only way to score is to give the AI almost all 1s and 2s if you can. So I think it takes too much of a choice out of there and kind of the interestingness of that dice placement. And basically all the points I've already said have been leading to my number 1, which is a full-on con, and that is the way the AI scores. And you've already kind of heard me mention it. It's been creeping its tendrils into the rest of the review, but the AI scores based on the values of the dice you have given it, those 2 out of 4 dice each round, and that's fine for simplicity of play. It's lovely to just add up their pips, and bam, I'm done. That's their score. But first of all, the difficulty level here is so off the charts, and it's so swingy and luck-based. If you just happen to be able to give them all 1s, you're going to win basically no matter what. And on the other hand, if you roll a ton of high values, no amount of mitigation is going to help you defeat their ridiculous score. And honestly, it just feels like a misstep overall. A solo mode that seemed beautiful in its simplicity, but actually kind of brings the rest of the gameplay down. So overall, you might like Sagrada if you enjoy dice placement games, especially really quick and straightforward ones. But I suspect many of you generally won't enjoy it if you only play the official solo mode, so I'm really recommending this one if you're either willing to do one of the variants on BGG. I showed one in my playthrough that I think works much better and basically models an actual player. Or if you think you're going to play it competitive, it's a nice lightweight game you can try out. But if you're just getting this for official solo, you don't want to mess around with printing out unofficial variants, I would probably give Sagrada a pass. And click the link right there if you want to see a playthrough of both official solo and one of the variants to kind of compare them yourself. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next